Good evening and welcome to the Tuesday, September 14th, 2021 Finance Committee of the City Council. With us this evening present, myself, Councilor Di Natale, also present Councilors Boschman, Hughes, Zarella, and Walsh, and also Auditor Brooks. We will begin with an announcement of a recording of public meetings. I ask anyone in the audience who is recording this meeting to please identify themselves for the record now by standing and stating their name and address. Seeing none. For the public forum, I'm going to opt to have people, each agenda item, speak if in the audience. If anyone here who wants to speak on a specific matter on the agenda, you can do so when we take it up at that time after the department head speaks. And if the committee has no objection, I'd like to move up first 14421, the resolution to fund improvements to Low Park. Is there any objection? Seeing none, we will start with the resolution for improvements to Lowell Park. Resolution, whereas the Board of Parks Commissioners voted to release a certain easement from jurisdiction of the Board of Parks Commissioners located at Lowell Park, and whereas the Board of Park Commissioners voted to authorize the City of Fitchburg to pursue the formal release of the easement area from the protections of Article 97 of the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and whereas the Board of Park Commissioners voted to authorize the City of Fitchburg to pursue the formal release of the easement area from the protections of a charitable trust, if any created by grant of property by Arthur H. and Annie P. Lowe, and whereas the Board of Parks Commissioners voted to declare the easement area to be surplus property and referred the same to the City Council for lawful disposition, and whereas the Board of Parks Commissioners voted to approve the foregoing in part in reliance on the city's intention to fund improvements at the Low Park in the amount of at least $150,000 after the receipt of 40R funds on account of this project. And whereas nothing herein shall prevent the city from appropriating any portion of said $150,000 prior to the receipt of said 40R funding, now therefore be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Fitchburg that 1, the City of Fitchburg shall by and through the Community Development and Planning Department adequately fund design and engineering for proposed improvements to Lowell Park identified by the Board of Parks Commissioners using funds from the zoning incentive payment received by the city through the 40R Smart Growth District designation for the approval of the Fitchburg Arts community, other funding sources available to the city or a combination thereof. Said funds shall be available to commence design and engineering for the proposed improvements to the park upon commencement of construction of the Fitchburg Arts community. Number 2, upon receipt of the density bonus payment for the completion of the Fitchburg Arts community under the 40R Smart Growth District, the City of Fitchburg shall by and through the Community Development and Planning Department fund improvements to Lowell Park approved by the Board of Parks Commissioners in the minimum amount of the lesser of $150,000 or the amount of said density bonus payment received by the city using funds from said density bonus payment, other funding sources available to the city, or a combination thereof. Said appropriation of at least $150,000 shall include any funds previously appropriated for the design and engineering of the proposed improvements. Is there any member of the public that would like to speak on this specific resolution? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Andy Van Hasing. I'm the Ward 4 City Councilor, and I submitted this resolution to the City Council. So the Fitchburg Arts Community has been a long time in development. It incorporates the redevelopment of the former B.F. Brown School, the city stables, and the Fitchburg High School Annex. And to allow the appropriate zoning for this development, we created a 40R Smart Growth overlay for downtown that includes this parcel. And in doing so, the city received a $75,000, I believe it's $75, and Tom can correct me if I'm wrong, $1,000 payment from the state as an incentive for doing so. And the city has approved plans for the redevelopment of this area with approximately 62 housing units, along with some artist workspace. And this will be done under the 40R Smart Growth permitting process, and it'll be eligible for a bonus density payment of approximately $3,000 per unit. With 60 units, that's about $186,000 that will be coming to the city. So what better use of this funds that this development will generate than to invest it right back into this immediate neighborhood? That the Parks Commission was kind enough to give an easement over a portion of Low Park to allow for this development. And it is a park that's been neglected for many years. There's an aging basketball court, a a softball field that I think I was probably the last one to ever play a game of kickball in it about 25 years ago. It's also the largest green space in the North of Main neighborhood. It's the only green space for the Longsjo Middle School to use for their students, and they regularly send students down there. And this is an area that could use investment, and we have a funding mechanism that is providing funds for this area, and I think it should be used to improve this park and make it a better resource for the community. Thank you.
Any other member of the public wishing to speak? Yes. Come on up. Yep.
I wasn't really prepared to speak, but I've been working on a project to do some renovations in Low Park, which has nothing to do with the $150,000 funding and would be happening within the year, to renovate the basketball court and paint a mural on the surface of the court, retaining the court lines, but making it really bright and colorful. And the plan was to involve the whole Elm Street community in the process of painting it. Like, so there would be a design laid out and little blocks, and they'd be able to color, and we would do like a big block party day kind of in the park in the spring. And I got a grant from the New View Communities, a pilot grant from the from the Art Stewards program that I've been involved with, to pay for materials. And I've already talked to the Parks Department, and they tabled it for next month to actually talk about the approval of the YMCA and the Longsjo School and the Elm Street Church, all the people who use that park, to agree that they want to have this art done and that they want to participate in it. And knowing that there's more funding coming in, it just seems like a good thing to do, to actually show that we're already doing more renovations and putting care into that place. And then I see a lot more opportunity for things to happen in the future.
Ma'am, could you state your name and address for the record?
So sorry,
Yeah,
I'm
that's fine.
Shara Osgood, and I'm an art steward, an environmental steward, and a member of the Fitchburg community.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Yes.
Good evening. Thanks for having me today. I'm Mark Doan. I'm the Executive Director of New View Communities, with address at 470 Main Street. And I have to say, I've testified many times before the City Council, but it is so wonderful to be here in this new building. Not that I didn't like Memorial School, but it's just a great place, and it certainly beats the old City Council chambers, which were so cramped and crowded. And part of why I want to talk about that is that I feel like with the Fitchburg Arts community, we're going to be building on this legacy of having this city, having a new city hall. We're reinvesting, and I feel like it's critical that we follow up with the commitment that we made to have this money go to the Parks Board. That it was the intention at the time that we would have this money go to help renovate Low Park. I feel like it's a great investment. It fits very well with the theater going across the street, this beautiful new building here in the Fitchburg Arts community that will be coming online. As Councilor Van Hazinga said, Low Park is the largest green space in the North of Main neighborhood. New View is building 16 new parking spots there as part of the project. That's part of what we're taking on. And we've already had several focus groups of residents and neighbors who want to help design a park for the future. As Councilor Van Hazinga said, I love softball, but maybe we want a softball field there, but let's think about what the future, and having some funding there could be really, really instrumental in doing that. And this is a one-time opportunity. It's a unique opportunity to redo the park, to have it fit in with City Hall, to have it fit in with the new Fitchburg Arts community. So we urge you to appropriate the funding, to work with the Parks Board to create an inclusive process that will involve residents and neighbors so that Low Park can be the park that we want it to be. And just as an update, New View is in the process of reapplying for funding now from the state. We could hear by the end of the year whether the project is funded, and that would then trigger the release of the funds once that project is completed. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak?
Hello, everyone. My name is Angel Kahasai. I'm a program director for the YMCA. We utilize Elm Street Park almost every summer for about 6 to 8 weeks. We run our summer leagues. We do a lot of activities, and at the end of the summer, we do a big cookout with the kids where we do different activities. An after-school program go there to use the park. And I think I've been with the Y for over 15 years. The park I don't think the lines have been done, anything like so. This would be a great opportunity for the city to do something for the teens and our young kids that live on Elm Street, High Street, and all the other surrounding streets in the area. I would say that we would be able to utilize it a lot more for the YMCA and after-school programs if we kind of did, the softball park and the basketball court over and the benches and the bleachers. I think it does need a lot of attention, and I don't think we've done anything for it in about 10 years or so. And like I said, we utilize it a lot. It's a big park for us. It's the only park we go to, and a lot of our teens love being there. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, any other members of the public wishing to speak?
Hi, I'm Tricia May. I'm the newly appointed principal of Longzhou Middle School. Thanks for having me. I'm here pretty spontaneously, so I didn't prepare anything, but I just wanted to let you know that the amazing students and staff at Longzhou would take great pride in anything happening over at the park, and I think we'd find that we'd end up also helping to care for it, and that would be good for everybody. So if there's any way we can partner, support, brainstorm, collaborate, we would love to be involved in support of our amazing, very active young people who need green space. Thank you.
Any other members of the public wishing to speak?
Good evening, councilors. Calvin, auditor. My name is Nick Erickson, for the record, interim commissioner of public works. So Low Park is one of the more frequently used parks that the city owns and maintains. It's a beautiful area, but it is in bad need of some renovation. DPW actually partnered with the Montechusett Opportunity Council several years ago for a grant opportunity to perform some updates at this park. Unfortunately, we were not successful, but DPW is committed to pursuing any sort of grant funding to assist in this effort. We know it's badly needed, renovations are badly needed at this park. We think it's a great idea to partner with the housing development going in next door, and you have DPW's support on this resolution.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Opening it up.
Chair, I believe there's a representative from the Fitchburg Arts Museum who registered and is trying to get into Zoom.
Is there someone on Zoom wanting to speak? Waiting to be allowed. Could we allow
Recording in
whoever's
progress.
waiting online to be let in, please? FATV? I'll need a signal from someone in FATV that we've opened it up.
We have it opened up, and we've asked them to unmute.
Okay. Is there someone online that'd like to speak?
Yes.
Yes,
Hang
hello.
on. See if I can start my video. Hi,
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine, thanks. Would you like me to speak?
Yes, proceed, please.
Okay. I'd like to thank the committee for the opportunity to speak this evening in support of the resolution to fund improvements to Lowe Park. My name is Rebecca Wright, Director of Development at the Fitchburg Art Museum, and I'm speaking on behalf of the museum, on behalf of our director, Nick Capasso, who couldn't be here tonight, and on behalf of our Board of Trustees and community advisors and our members. The Fitchburg Art Museum abuts Lowe Park in the Elm Street neighborhood, and the museum is also a key partner with New View Communities in the development of the Fitchburg Arts community, which also abuts the park. We support improvements to Lowe Park to reinvigorate an underused recreational space, to enhance accessibility and safety for park users, to help attract tenants to the Fitchburg Arts community, and to improve the overall quality of life and community health for our neighbors, staff, and visitors. The Fitchburg Art Museum would also welcome improvements to the park so that we can begin to plan for its use in programs and events coordinated by the Art Museum and our many community partners. We feel the resolution is important for the Fitchburg Art Museum, for the neighborhood, and important for Fitchburg. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And with that, I will now, Mr. Skoworski.
Good evening, councilors. I won't spend any time discussing the virtues of Lowe Park, as I think the community members present here did so eloquently already. What I just wanted to talk about was more the technical details of this resolution. So to take you back to pre-pandemic days, there was an item at Lowe Park, the BF Brown School, what a lot of folks would consider to be the driveway to enter the school, where you would often park, if you're going to the Fitchburg Art Museum or to Lowe Park. Through New View's due diligence, was found to be in 1903 deeded to the city as parkland along with the rest of Lowe Park. And that initiated a pretty complicated process, which many of you as counselors were part of, where we needed a unanimous vote of the Parks Board, of the Conservation Commission, and of course the City Council to grant an easement to New View, and then basically forward a home rule petition to the state for it to get a 2/3 vote of the House and Senate. This took over a year, was a pretty complicated process, and as part of this, discussion started with the Parks Board about supporting Lowe Park with some of the funding opportunities that became available through the rezoning effort for the Fitchburg Arts community. And as was referenced by Councilor Van Hazinga, there was a $75,000 zoning incentive payment that we have received and actually is on the council docket tonight, and then a $3,000 per unit density bonus payment, which will be awarded upon occupancy of the Fitchburg Arts Community Project when it's completed. The original commitment was made between, the mayor and the Parks Board informally, to be sure, to make a commitment to support Lowe Park in the amount of $150,000. The original resolution stated specifically that those funds were to come from the zoning incentive payment and to come from the density bonus payment. I just wanted to note that because what you see in front of you is slightly different. What it states here is that we, unequivocally will support Lowe Park in at least $150,000 in additional improvements in the years to come. Hopefully it's much more than that, frankly, because as you heard tonight, there's a great deal of support behind this park. But what this resolution was tweaked to do differently when brought in front of the council was that it did not indicate that the funds had to come from the zoning incentive payment and had to come from the density bonus payment. And the reason's pretty simple. Those two funding sources are very flexible and could be used for a variety of different things. There are other resources that are specifically geared towards parks that might be a more appropriate way to fund our parks. For example, the Community Development Block Grant Program is a great resource that we can utilize to help support our parks. The state park grant and other state and nonprofit grant resources could also be resources to help improve the parks. And again, community development and planning, we are unequivocally supportive of initiating the designs very soon to make a plan for a whole-scale improvement of Low Park. We're just saying that this doesn't necessarily have to come from those two funding sources. I think we are sort of tying our hands a bit in doing that. So that's the slight difference from the original resolution with the Parks Board to what Councilor Van Hazen got put in front of your desks this evening, and I'd be happy to take any questions if you have them.
So I will begin by stating that in the instance of Lowell Park, where you already have an existing parcel of land that has been a park previously, this is about renovation. It's not about creating a new park. However, I cannot not say this in public, given the history of our difficulty with maintenance of parks. We certainly don't need any new ones. And just this past week, I've been requesting that Nolan Park off of Beekman Street, or in the Beekman Street area in Ward 1, has a lot of issues. And there are other parks in this city that have a lot of issues. So I am not against this, because we're going to spruce it up, make it look great. It's going to look great. It's going to be well utilized, and it complements the Art Museum, the Elm Street neighborhood, Longs Joe, and the artist colony that's going at BF Brown. My concern is 5 or 6 or 7 years after the park is done. Are we going to be reactive to maintaining these parks because we have 2 or 3 people for 40 some odd parks? So, and this isn't a criticism of DPW, it's just we have so many of these that they look wonderful to begin with, but then after so many years, they fall by the wayside. And I really, really cannot stress enough how much I want that to not happen with this one now. Because there's already a lineup of parks we've got currently that are in bad need of attention. I actually asked the rec director before he went on leave, are we taking an inventory of every park we own in this city and saying, this park needs all these things, this park needs, and I'm not talking de-weeding, new mulch, grass cutting. That is easy to do. That is not as costly to do, but I'm talking repairing of equipment, removal of graffiti. These are concerns that I have because of what I'm experiencing today with residents who send me photos of some of the park conditions. So while I am going to support the resolution, and I am excited for the park to get some new life, I do have a legitimate concern, as do many of my constituents, about the future stability of this park in terms of its maintenance and upkeep, considering our current state of difficulty in maintaining the existing parks we have. So I know the interim commissioner is here, I know you're here, but I just wanted to get that on the record that I support this, but I do have concerns down the road. Is there any thought given to the mitigation of these problems occurring at this specific park?
It's a great question. So I actually have 2 responses. I guess the first piece would be that I think we've often found that as a municipality, we can only do so much with regard to maintenance and upkeep, right? And you know, DPW is doing a wonderful job with the resources they have. At the same time, I think we've found with a lot of the work that we do, if we can find local champions to help serve as stewards of the local parks or other public resources, they're more likely to be sustainable and successful in the long term. And I think, you know, in this case specifically, you have a park that's going to be right beside the Fitchburg Arts community and right across the street from the Fitchburg Arts Museum, but also part of a really active neighborhood group. You know, those are the big fish, so to speak, but you also have Elm Street Church, and you also have a number of committed residents that have been working with New View for years, and some of which spoke this evening. So I think having resident and local leaders who can serve as stewards for the park is a really important way that we can leverage and expand our impact. And I think we have that here, thankfully. I think the other piece is we're working with DPW over the next year as the council authorized an open space and recreation plan that we'll be working together on. And part of what we'll be doing is, you know, above and beyond Low Park, thinking more broadly about what our needs are. And frankly, once this is a bigger conversation, perhaps next week when we're talking about ARPA funding. But what I would love to do is develop that plan, develop sort of a punch list, if you will, of what those key items are throughout our park system, and see what we might be able to do within ARPA and the funding we'll have there to knock out some of those improvements as well.
So so with respect to the parks, the Board of Parks Commissioners controls the parks, right? And the steward of the Board of Parks Commissioners is the Recreation Director, as far as I understand.
Correct.
And I know the DPW does the maintenance, but the Board of Parks Commissioners has say over the parks. Does your office have any involvement with that regard? I know you guys are heavily involved with CDBG and parks and playground upkeep or improvements, but in terms of the maintenance or the inventory, as you stated earlier, is your office involved in that at all, or is that strictly a Board of Parks Commissioner and Recreation Director function?
So I think with regard to the open space and recreation plan, that's something that we lead in partnership with DPW and in partnership with our Board of Parks Commissioners, but also Amy LeBlanc, our Senior Project Manager, is a regular attendee at the Parks Board meetings and is often kept apprised of what those maintenance issues are. And just last week met with Nick Erickson and Gary Withington to talk about the Park Hill Park improvements we're funding through CDBG, and kind of prioritizing what those projects look like. So we're pretty involved and collaborative with DPW on those items.
Thank you. Councilor Hughes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This question is for Mr. Doan, if I could direct the question to him, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I'll allow it. Yep.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
My question is, Mr. Doan, from your organization, would your organization be willing to partner with our Parks Department in terms of helping provide maintenance? Maybe the YMCA could jump on board, and maybe each organization take one weekend a month, you know what I mean, to kind of help maintain it until our department can get their feet on the ground with more staff, you know what I mean? Because I'd hate to see this go down the tubes. It seemed like everybody in the room was for this to happen. So our general concern is maintenance and upkeep. If we don't do that, then like Councilor Di Natale said, it's just going to end up like the rest of the park. So I didn't know if there's some kind of way we could build a kind of, on the record partnership in terms of maintenance. Maybe the Art Museum can pick a week and Newview pick a week, the YMCA pick a week. I know they have a lot of kids down there. You have a lot of people part of your organization that do a lot of community service. So I didn't know if that's something that, we could kind of spearhead. Maybe the parks could spearhead that, kind of bring all the resources together to also maintain it.
We'd be willing to take a look at it. I don't know, I think some of that goes into, how we design the park, making sure that it's low maintenance stuff from the beginning. I do think there also is some things where if you know about it, if you stitch in time saves nine, so knowing that there's something that's, that we might be able to just fix a little earlier if it's broken or something like that. So we'd certainly be willing to take part in a conversation and work with DPW and the planning department and Elm Street Church, Sundial, the Art Museum, and see if there's something that we couldn't do. We've done, as you know, many years. We've partnered with Crossroads Church and many others to go clean up. We've spent many, many hours, particularly in Low Park, cleaning the park. So I feel like we've done, and there may be something like that we could do. We've done painting projects. We've done, weeding and clearing things out and boarding up buildings and fixing all, the parks are always a high priority for that group of people. That's sort of been broken by the pandemic, but maybe now when we're not all in masks, it's something that we can go back to and put that as a regular part of an annual cleanup or something like that we could do. But certainly would be very interested in discussing it and trying to put something together.
Okay, thank you.
For the record, I've had my sleeves rolled up with Mark at Low Park pulling weeds out of the overgrowth there. So it's
on the hill.
We've worked, on the hill.
On the hill.
Exactly.
So.
Thank you.
Councilor Boschman.
Probably know what I'm already going to say. I'm all in favor, but I'll vote for this resolution. But I want to make sure, I want to understand something. $75,000 plus 180 Is that what Andy's saying? Should go to low playground?
The commitment in the resolution is 150,000.
Right, I know 150,000, but he talked about 75 and $3,000 per unit, which is 60 units, which comes up to 180,000 in my book. So 150 and 180 is 320 or 330,000. Is he suggesting that all that money go to the park?
As in Councilor Van Hazinga?
Yeah.
I'll let him, well, I don't know how that works.
I'll allow it. Yep, go ahead.
So the resolution calls for a minimum of $150,000. That would come out of the funds that I mentioned.
Okay.
So a greater amount is being generated through the 40R Smart Growth funding from Fitchburg Arts Community, the 75 plus the 182 or whatever it is. So what I'm recommending in this resolution is those funds be used to spend on the park. It's not a cumulative amount that the 300,000, the number that you mentioned.
All right. Now, my other question, and I asked you this earlier, is Newview donating any money towards this park? And if not, why not?
Well, Newview Communities, as part of their approval for the project, is building a parking lot that's going to be used for the park. And their development is generating the funding that can be used to pay for these improvements.
So and I think that's really just thinking cumulatively, there is well over, my math is bad on the spot, but well over $250,000 in funding between these two sources that wouldn't be here without the Fitchburg Arts Community Project. So, and some of those funds will be used for other purposes, like the things we'll be discussing this evening with the parking. So I do think there's a huge collateral benefit to the investment that they're making on top of the $30+ million that the arts community will bring in investment to that neighborhood.
The other thing I have a hard time with is, because I have a park in my area, so you have to understand this, and I've been trying for 6 years, and they actually literally called, because we went to a meeting on this, it's called a line of sight. As a matter of fact, Monument Park, they made everybody take out the benches and some of the bushes, and kept certain ones. Now, for over 6 years, I have asked numerous times to cut the overgrowth down. We don't have the funds to cut the growth down. I walk around Coolidge Park to take my exercises, and we talk about a gateway park. And it's a shame. It's literally a shame the way it looks, the grass. And the kids are playing baseball on that kind of turf and that. It looks like it's all bumpy and weeds. I'm criticizing because we want a lot of things, and we're all going to say we're going to do everything. And people volunteer, but it gets old. It really gets old. Like the principal says, I got no problem. You want to help out? You know what? We got to pick up the trash down there. We get people that go down there. We go down there every year. And there's the Board of Health guy there, and we spend a lot of hours down there cleaning up the trash at Viet Brown Playground. Matter of fact, the lady behind Tom spent one whole Saturday with a crew of people taking out about 15 to 20 mattresses out of there, plus the trash. And it was clean prior to that. And this is the problem I have. I have no problem with parks if we can maintain them and keep them presentable. I'm not looking have a beautiful park and people can't use it. I want people to use it, but I want it to look presentable where people will say, hey, wow, this is really nice, and we can play on it. But don't give me weeds, and don't say I can't afford to pull out the bushes so people can protect the park and they can't see on the other side of the park. And I brought that up to you the other day, again, when we had the ceremony coming. And we're going to spend almost $800,000, if I'm not mistaken, on Park Hill. But that was all grants from that Pollock fund, most of it. You guys are only investing $40,000 on the baseball field and the track, $40,000. But that's the problem I'm having on these parks, and I get really frustrated when I see it. I get frustrated when I walk down to Coolidge. I get frustrated when I go, like he says, to different other parks, and I look around and I say, we can't maintain them. We're not doing a good job. When actually not. As a matter of fact, one time I didn't want to pay what was that, Johnny Appleseed, the $50,000, and I wanted to invest it in the parks, because they don't have enough money and they don't have the funds. And the only reason why I asked about Newville is because I feel very strongly that they should donate something, a lot more than 16 parking spaces, because they're going to use it. You get my support. I'll be a fool not to support it's going to improve the neighborhood, and I'm not against your neighborhood. But what I'll tell you again, what I'd like to see for your neighborhood, you should have a splash park in there for the young kids. Really, there's a lot of young kids in that neighborhood, and they need a place to go, so they're coming all the way up to Park Hill, going all the way down to Coolidge. A nice splash park for them in the neighborhood would be great. But that's it. You got my support, so don't worry about it.
Councilor Zarella.
Thank you. I'd just like to note that, yes, we have a lot of parks in the city. A lot of them need maintenance. Everyone knows that. We've got to start somewhere. I mean, we have an opportunity to fix this park at this point in time. The other parks presumably will be on the list to be fixed as soon as we can. But it doesn't really make a lot of sense to be concerned about the parks that aren't in front of us when the only question is whether we should fix the one that we can actually do something about right now. It's the same thing that, you know, we see, unfortunately, all too commonly on social media when the list of streets that are going to be repaired gets put out, and people who have been asking for the streets to be repaired then start saying, well, why these streets and not those streets? Because we can't fix them all at once, because we don't have, you know, an unlimited line of credit, an American Express Black Card or something. So we've got to start somewhere, and this seems like a good place to start, particularly as it has a great amount of synergy with all these other projects and investments that are taking place in the area. So I would strongly support this.
Okay.
Make a motion, we accept.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to accept Resolution 14421. Any discussion?
I just want to say one thing, Mr. Chair.
Councilor Boschman.
I just want to make sure they understand something. I understand we're spending a lot of money here, and I have no problem. But the council said to my right, we have to start somewhere. But if we're going to start somewhere, we better make sure we do it every year to other parks. We just can't keep on waiting. The parks were terrible. A lot of people use the parks, especially Park Hill and Coolidge Park, a lot of people. And it's a shame. It's really, literally a shame that we call these places parks, and they're not that good, especially if they're walking around. It's bad. It's not that good. Okay, thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
If there is no objection, I will take this under unanimous consent for approval. It has been passed unanimously by the committee.
Thank you, councilors.
Sign it.
I need a pen.
You got one right there? All right.
It's a pencil.
Okay.
Before I change my mind.
All right, now we'll start from the beginning of the agenda. 152-21. Sign that and pass it down, please. 152-21. Sorry. In order that the City of Fitchburg hereby approves the expenditure of funds from the Massachusetts Executive Office of Public Safety and Security State 911 Department grant in the approximate amount of $174,594 for the purpose of said grant, which is to support salaries and provide repair enhancement to the E911 service system in the police department. Chief Martineau.
Good evening, councilors, Mr. Chairman. This is a reoccurring grant that the Fitchburg Police Department gets yearly. This helps support our funding of our emergency dispatches. Last year, we received the same exact number, roughly within a few dollars, to $174,000. That number is usually generated about as it regards to calls for service. These funds are very important to the city of Fitchburg because that's taxpayer money that now we're spending for our personnel in the dispatch center.
there any questions from the committee?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve. Council Boschman to step out briefly, but I will take this under unanimous consent if there are no objection. So it passes 4-0. 15321, in order that the City of Fitchburg hereby approves the expenditure of funds from the Massachusetts Executive Office of Public Safety and Security State 911 Department Training Grant in the approximate amount of $44,690.39 for the purpose of said grant, which is to train both fire and police department dispatchers in medical and 911 emergency procedures. Chief Martineau.
Thank you. This is the second part of that grant. The first part primarily goes towards salaries for 911 emergency dispatchers. As your council is aware, the Fitchburg Police Department is the primary PSAP for 911 communications in the city, while the fire department is the secondary PSAP, where it handles medical calls for service. Fitchburg Police Department is budgeted and funded for 12 emergency dispatches. Each of those dispatches are required to go through extensive training during the year, as does the Fitchburg firefighters that man their secondary PSAP. This $44,000, it goes towards all training efforts by both Fitchburg Fire and Fitchburg Police as it's related to 911 dispatch.
Any questions on this item?
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion made and seconded to approve 15321. There are no objections. I will take this under unanimous consent. Seeing none, it passes. 15421, in order that the City of Fitchburg hereby approves the expenditure of funds from the Massachusetts Executive Office of Public Safety and Security Highway Safety Division grant in the approximate amount of $3,300 for the purpose of said grant, which is to purchase federally approved child passenger safety seats. Chief Martineau.
Thank you. Once again, we apply for this grant each year. In past years, we've purchased bicycle helmets that we give out continuously during the year to our neighborhood children. This year, we were trying to replenish our stock of certified car seats that we give out to residents that may not have the ability to purchase a car seat or may have an older car seat. I have police officers that are trained in the proper installation of car seats. This is a great community effort project that the police department does each year where we're able to distribute these car seats to just families that, quite frankly, don't have the means to get the newest and latest car seat. And you know what, if one child is buckled up safely, this $3,300 goes a long way, and I hope you can approve it this evening.
Make a motion we accept.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to accept 15421. If there are no objections, I will take this under unanimous consent. Seeing none, it passes. 15521, in order that the City of Fitchburg hereby approves the expenditure of funds from the Digital Federal Credit Union gift in the approximate amount of $7,500 for the purpose of said gift, which is to support the police department efforts in providing quality programs to our city's youth. Chief Martineau.
Thank you. I was looking forward to this one more than any of this evening. This is my opportunity to give a big shout out and a thank you to our partners at Digital Credit Union. They have really partnered with the Fitchburg Police Department in the last 4 to 5 years, providing funds that we can distribute back in the community to the children in the community. This $7,500, I believe this might be the 4th year they've been donating that amount of money. I believe it started at $2,500, and they've seen year after year what our officers do with that money and how we redistribute it to the community, and they continue giving. So if anybody out there watching this, Digital Credit Union has been a strong community partner with the Fitchburg Police Department, and a heartfelt thankful on my part. This $7,500 goes to events and community events throughout the year. Our marquee event that we conduct each year, known as our Junior Police Academy, where 40 children are given the opportunity to come into the world of law enforcement and see what we do. It funds that entire event. We spent countless weekends this past summer up at different parks bringing in ice cream trucks. As I was saying to Councilor Boschman before the meeting started, nothing gets to a kid greater than an ice cream cone. And I can't tell you how many ice cream cones we bought this summer, whether it was at the skateboard park during their event this summer, or down at Coolidge Park, or at the police Junior Police Academy. Their funds go a long way, and they recognize what we do with those funds. So once again, I said it before, just a heartfelt thank you to the Digital Credit Union for the support of our children's youth, our city's youth.
I make a motion we accept.
Second.
A motion has been made and seconded to accept 15521. If there are no objections, I'll take this under unanimous consent. Seeing none, it passes.
Thank you, Chief.
councilors.
Thank you, Chief.
Take care of yourself.
15621, in order that there being hereby is transferred from within the sum of $15,768 to be transferred from Health Personal Services Food and Milk Inspector and credited to Health Expenses Food Consulting Expenses. Director of Health Curry.
Good evening, councilors. This request was actually written in August with the goal of hoping that these funds would not be needed past October 1st. Now being the mid-September, we're still in the interviewing process. It looks like it's probably going to be a few more weeks past the October 1st deadline, but it does appear that the $15,000 will get us a few more weeks. I haven't had to, I've been able to cover a lot of the services within the department, but there have been some new facilities opening up, and it's been some time-consuming plan review for these new restaurants and facilities. But it looks like the funds will get us the time we need at present.
Councilor Boschman.
How much does it cost us to hire a consultant?
Consultants are usually anywhere from $100 to $300 an hour.
103. So we had this vacant. I don't mean to pick on you. I know we talked already, but it really upsets me what's going on. And if we get to pay $100 to $300 an hour, and we had this opening since October of last year?
The previous employee resigned in February.
Okay, since February. So basically, I was talking to Kel, the city auditor over there, and I was telling him, so I don't pull no bones or talk behind people's back. But if you figure on $100 an hour, and you figure from February, March, April, May, June, July, September, you're talking well over $100,000 for services. Are you telling me that they don't work 40 hours a week or 30 hours a week, and all they're doing is working like when we need them on a need-to-know basis?
So the consultants I've been utilizing for basically the new restaurants and new brewery that opened, the consultants are doing plan review on the kitchen to make sure that the food process as part of the facility is a safe and effective. So it's a few hours extra work to do these plan reviews. And then there's the pre-opening, a couple of inspections, pre-opening and then final inspection as these new facilities open. So it gets to be a little time consuming. I'm able to cover a lot of the inspectional complaints and the inspectional duties that are mandated by the position already. I've been utilizing consultants for basically complaints and new facilities that are opening. So it's not the entire job, if that makes sense, that's being covered with this consultant money.
So what about the other stuff that's supposed to be done? That's not being done?
We are a bit behind on the inspections of restaurants. Some of them have not been inspected for almost a year now, so that will be the goal, to catch up as soon as the employee is hired.
You know, what I have a hard time, I know you and I talk, and I know I have a hard time what's going on. I really have a hard time to accept what's going on. Not only with you, but with other departments too. That people are not getting hired when we should be hiring them. I don't know how we can run a city, a business, and be proactive in what we're doing if we can't get the help. Now, I told you my concerns. I got a lot of complaints, and they're saying I'm doing nothing and I needed you there. And we have a saying, and I told Calvin it's SH or get off the pot. You know, I can't understand why we're not Why is it taking so long to hire? It's not money. I know it's not money. It's just taking us so long to hire. We're 6, 7 months out. I mean, how can you stay in business? But this is government, and only in government do you see this. And it's not, don't get me wrong, I back you 100% all the time, but tonight, I'm not backing 100% tonight. I'm not voting for this tonight. I'm hoping some of my fellow councilors don't vote for it. I know what you said in the paperwork, and you said it's the law. I grant you, if it's the law tonight, why wasn't it law back in October or February? Where is the law in February, but it's the law tonight when you send me that? And that's my questions. But I'm not supporting you tonight. I'm going to vote against it, and I'm going to ask my fellow council. If they don't do it here on a full council, I'll ask them. As a matter of fact, I talked to them before about this whole system, but not just you, about other things going on in the city. And I'm not happy. And Anthony, you know that, Council President. And it's not good. It's not good at all. We're here to run a business. We're here to be efficient, and we're here to answer to the public. Not the public answering to me, telling us we're not doing a good job. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
So whenever we have personnel discussions like this, it is not in the city council's purview to get into the hiring practices of the city. That is a mayoral function. So the mayor is the chief executive of this city and responsible for hiring under the tutelage of the HR director, who is not here tonight. And so I am not going to sit here and pretend why I know why you haven't had a replacement filled in a while. You did say interviews are starting this coming month?
Can you repeat that question?
What did you say about this position? You having interviews coming up?
Well, when I made this request, it was August 2nd.
Yep.
It being now September 14th, and an employee, assuming has another position, would offer a 2-week removal from the position they're in. That brings us close to October. So I don't see us having an employee by October 1st.
Is the job posted?
It was posted back around Memorial Day, closing, and then it was reposted again in July. So we've reviewed about 30 candidates, and we've interviewed 2.
And you haven't found anybody so far that you think is...
Got to repeat the question.
You haven't found anybody yet who you feel is qualified for the position?
We haven't interviewed all the candidates I wish to interview at this time.
Okay. So that's important information. So the job has been posted since Memorial Day. They had 30 applicants. They've interviewed 2 of those 30. I'm assuming there's quite a few applicants that didn't meet the criteria for an interview.
There were a number of applicants, probably two-thirds that did not meet the criteria.
So you're talking maybe 10 people, and you still want to interview those other 8, but you haven't been able to schedule something yet?
Probably more like 4 or 5.
Okay. And that's not on the city. We've reached out to them, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, so what I'm trying to get at here, ladies and gentlemen, is when you dig a little deeper, you learn a little bit more. The job's been posted for 4 or 5 months. We had 30 applicants, 2/3 of which right off the bat were not qualified. We interviewed 2, didn't pick those 2. We have 4 or 5 that we would like to interview, who we've reached out to interview, and they have not gotten back to us. Maybe they found other jobs, maybe they found something else they want to do, maybe they don't want to do it anymore. I don't know. So this isn't a problem of moving forward on hiring somebody. We're trying to hire somebody. And as we've seen a recurring theme throughout many of our departments this year especially, and we heard from even a private sector firm who does our trash and recycling pickup during the budget session, everyone is hemorrhaging people, the need for people. You go down every street, every business, big, small, medium, no matter what it is, there's a now hiring sign on every business. So when I say it's the mayor and the HR director and the health director, what I'm saying is, first of all, this council has no jurisdiction over how we hire, when we hire, what we do, other than during budget time if we want to slash a budget here or there to make a point. What I'm trying to get across to people is there is a story behind this. It's not just the city hasn't tried to hire someone in 5 years, so we're left holding the bag. This is a national problem. There's a lot of places that can't hire people, that can't find qualified people. Up until early September, people were being paid more to stay home than they were to actually go get a job. So I don't know if that has any bearing on this matter. I would assume it doesn't because of the salary range. This is a matter of trying to find someone qualified for a specialized field, and we haven't been able to find one yet. And the ones that we would like to talk to, they're not getting back to us for whatever reason. That's not our fault. So we have to keep grinding away at this, and if this is what we have to do in the meantime to do a stopgap measure, that's what we have to do to keep things moving as best as we can, but this is not a personnel or a management issue, period. This is just an unfortunate situation that is felt by a lot of our departments, and it's not because of funds, and it's not because we're not looking for people. People are not either interested or they don't want to do these jobs. Period. So I'm sure we'll find somebody. We just haven't yet. So we got to do this in the meantime. It's not ideal. We're falling behind, but we also didn't, plan on the inspector resigning in February. So this is the cards we were dealt with for right now. Councilor Zarella.
Thank you. First, I'd just like to note in response to my esteemed and respected colleague, that the law hasn't changed since February. It's simply that this is the point in time at which we need an infusion of additional funds to continue to meet our legal obligations.
Mr. President, it's not an additional funds, it's a transfer.
Yes,
It's a transfer.
I apologize.
That's
You're
another important
very
point.
correct.
We're not
Mr.
using
Chair.
free cash here, it's just moving.
This is money that has already been appropriated to the
Position.
Contract position, and we're just transferring it to an outside consultant.
Personal service is too expensive.
Yes, and the reason it's happening now and not back in February is because I assume there was sufficient money to cover the necessary expenses up until August. Would that be correct?
My prediction was up until October 1st. I don't think we're going to make that.
Right, okay. So one further question, is this a union position?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so like I said back during budget time, there is a nationwide labor shortage. And it's not just at unskilled positions, it's kind of a trickle-up effect in essence. And unlike the private sector, because we have public sector unions in the city, we can't simply raise the salary, raise the hiring offer for just for these vacant positions in order to incentivize more people to apply. If we were to do that, we would have to alter our contract with all the rest of the union members. That is a problem that many private businesses do not have. They have the option to say, oh, we'll hire you at a higher rate because we really need to fill this position. We can't do that. So I don't know for certain that is why why there hasn't been more interest in the position and why more qualified people haven't applied. But that would be my guess, is that this is not an issue with the Fitchburg, food and milk inspector. This is an issue with the national labor market, which just so happens to include the city of Fitchburg. So I will be supporting this transfer. It is not costing the city an additional dime above what has already been appropriated. And I certainly hope that one of the remaining 4 or 5 candidates turns out to be suitable. But if they do not, that is not the fault of the health director or the mayor. If the circumstance were different, there might be something for us to debate, but I don't think there is at the moment.
Yeah, like I said earlier about Waste Management having problems hiring, and they were offering signing bonuses, training stipends, things that the city can't do. So we're also competing with the private sector in respect to people are getting signing bonuses, they're getting training licenses paid for. We can't do that because it's not in our contracts. Where I work, very briefly, where I work in the private sector, our manufacturing group is not unionized. We are in desperate need of laborers on our factory floor for production. We can't find anybody interested. We're basically begging people to come and apply by giving $250 gift cards if you can refer them. We're pulling out all the stops here.
Yeah.
So this is going on all over the place. So it's not a simple matter of we don't have someone here. What are we doing? So while I understand that there are concerns about the work not getting done, Mr. Curry is saying we are behind, but we're doing what we need to do to stay afloat until we get that permanent position. And hopefully that'll happen soon.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve.
On the motion. On the
Speaking on the
motion.
motion, Counsel Boschman.
On the motion. I just want to go back, and I'm not going to repeat myself. I understand there's a shortage, and I understand what I read in the New York Wall Street Journal, that people are ever since this pandemic, they're picking and choose where they want to work. Because it's not like our generation, where once you had a job, you stayed. They're all quitting and they're going somewhere else, and they're doing things that they literally like to do, and I understand that. The pay is excellent. For 37 hours a week, it's very good. To get time off in government, it's very good. To do work for government and the benefits that they have, very good. The private sector can't compete with government. That's the problem. My problem is this. We sit around and we wait. That's the problem I have when we knew that she resigned, and we get somebody else that was going to retire, and we wait. That's the problem I have, and then everything else falls behind. And it's not right.
Counselor,
Thank you.
if I may just correct what you said, we did not wait.
We did wait.
We did not wait.
We did wait.
Posted the job Memorial Day 5 months ago, and you heard the director say we had 30 applicants, 2/3 of which were not qualified, 2 of which we interviewed that we did not select, and 4 or 5 that we would like to interview that we've reached out to who have not gotten back to us. That was the testimony provided, which does not correlate with what you just said.
I understand what you're saying.
End of story.
Mr. Chair,
Okay?
I understand that. But how long did we wait to go back and interview? Did we wait a month to see if these other guys are still around?
Mr. Boschman, it's not that simple, and I'm sure Ms. Davis or Mr. Curry can provide more insight, but, we look at things black and white. We have to start thinking about how there's a lot of moving parts and a lot of intricacies that are involved in these processes that don't work as quickly and as efficiently as we would like. There isn't always the issue of just someone sleeping at the wheel, okay? So we've heard the testimony of the logistics of how this transpired, and it makes perfect sense. Thank you. Motion has been made and seconded to approve 156-21. All in favor of approval?
Aye.
Opposed? 1 in opposition, Councilor Boschman. Passes 4-1. Thank you. 157-21, in order that there be and hereby is transferred from within the sum of $25,000 to be transferred from reserve for other municipal purposes, capital expenses, and credited to community development expenses, downtown cleanup. Mr. Skorsky.
Good evening, councilors. What we have in front of you, actually 157 and 158-1, they're both linked, and it's essentially an accounting exercise. So the downtown cleanup project sponsored by Reimagine North of Main and Fitchburg State University was one of the projects that was funded through year 47 of our CDBG action plan, which came in front of the council in the spring. Once July 1st hit and that CDBG year began, Reimagine North of Main and the university began in earnest implementing that project. And in discussions with my staff about the scope of that work, there was an item that had cropped up regarding the planting of annuals. which seems relatively unimportant, but in the CDBG world, landscaping, and in particular, decorative landscaping that is for a point in time, but not something that would be maintained for years to come, is not an acceptable and eligible expense. So we had a discussion with the university and then actually brought it up to HUD just to confirm that was not an eligible activity. And in so doing, HUD told us that most of what was in the scope, in other words, the cleanup, was not a CDBG eligible activity. So we were faced with a challenge because we had made a commitment and really a partnership with the university and Reimagine North Domain to fund this downtown cleanup work, and we wanted to stay true to that partnership and commitment that we had made, but it was not eligible. So the decision was made. CDBG can fund some things really well. They can fund parks, as we just discussed with Low Park, or the Park Hill Park work that we're funding this year. It can fund streetscape work. It's funding the main Boulder project currently. And so the thought was, if we could transfer the downtown cleanup money, the $25,000 from CDBG, and transfer that money into CDBG streetscapes, so that could support the main Boulder project. We would then take $25,000 away from the streetscapes line that is in our general fund, which was appropriated over a year ago by the council and is being used for the main Boulder project today, taking 25 away from that and distributing it to the downtown cleanup. So in essence, we're taking CDBG and HUD out of the picture, but we're funding something that the council authorized back in the spring, which was to support this downtown cleanup activity. So nothing has changed, but for one thing. There was a discussion at the council meeting that the cleanup should extend beyond downtown and extend to River Street. We, so again, funded $25,000 in downtown cleanup. The scope that was received from Einstein, the team who's going to be working with the University in North Maine on this, was for $33,000 and only covered downtown. So we simply do not have sufficient funds to do the River Street project as well. So I just wanted to state that in full transparency. The funds aren't there. That additional $8,000 and change is actually being supported by the university as a matching fund for this effort. And at that, I'll take any questions you may have.
So, Tom, this 15721 and 158 are related?
They're interconnected.
That's the swap?
That's the swap, in essence.
Okay. Councilor Zarella.
Thank you. So just to sort of restate what you've just said, this is an entirely revenue neutral matter. We're just moving we're just sort of shuffling $25,000 from here to here and then $25,000 from here to here.
Correct.
To make everything work out in terms of legal technicalities.
Correct.
Okay.
Would it be okay for the committee if we were to take 15821 as well? Up in this discussion? And that applies to what you just said. Okay. So this is 157 and 158. Council Boschman.
I got one thing. I already talked to Tom. What I have a hard time about this whole street cleanup and all this, and I'll tell you quite frank, we're cleaning up private property, and I have a hard time. Whether you want to call it vacant or not, somebody owns that building, and somebody owns that walkway in there that's all full of trash, and we're not getting a dime from it. We're spending money, but we don't go up in Clegon and clean the elderly people's homes out in front of their yards or cut their grass or rake their lawn. And that's the problem I'm having with this whole thing. If Tom came back to me and says, we're going to charge these guys that we're cleaning up their empty buildings in front of their property, fine, 100%, I'd go right for it. But this is ridiculous. Do nothing and we'll take care of you. You own the property, we'll take care of you. And then they want me, and they tell all of us, let's support downtown. Well, where are they? All right, go ahead. Thank you.
Councilor Zarella.
Thank you. So obviously, absentee landlords, vacant buildings, those are problems we know we have. And getting those owners and absentees to take care of their properties or pay for the necessary improvements to their properties, that's a problem we know we have. But in the absence of a quick and easy way to do that, to get them to pay, which isn't as simple as just voting it or having Tom call them on the phone, would that it were, but in the absence of that, we basically have to decide between taking advantage of the opportunity to do the cleanup anyway, even if these deadbeat, owners may benefit from it for free, or leaving it a mess to the detriment of the entire downtown business community just in order to stick it to those owners who clearly don't care about it to begin with. I would favor the former move in conjunction with continuing to search for better ways to make those owners accountable. But in the interim, it's still got to get cleaned in order to make downtown better. And we already voted as a council to approve this cleanup effort. This is just an accounting issue that needs to be resolved in order to maintain the legalities.
Council Hughes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tom, my question is, was this put out to bid? Or, you know what I mean? I know you said Einstein does it. Was it put out to bid? And because I'm thinking, there's a lot of aspiring, small business owners, landscapers or whatever. And I'm thinking, if it was put out to bid, maybe give these smaller people a chance to, you know what I mean?
Right. No, it's a good question. So it was put out as, the university is the backbone of Reimagine North Domain, so they have to follow public procurement, similar to what we do. It was put out as an on-call contract of theirs. So this is one of their on-call clients, Einstein, which thankfully is a Fitchburg-based company. But as we have with on-call contracts, then they were given a quote for this particular service. But I believe they were the only on-call applicant that submitted a proposal back when they had selected.
So this is backed up by Fitchburg State, or partnership with Fitchburg State and funded through Fitchburg State?
Correct.
And their resources. Okay, thank you.
Motion to approve 157 and 158-21.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve 157 and 158-21. Any discussion on the motion?
On the motion.
Councilor Boschman?
I just got one thing to say, but I'm going to support it. I just want to make it very clear, and the councilors remember, and the mayor was sitting right over there, and he said he would, and he talked about it briefly, River Street would be taken care of, and I think the money was, what, $35,000, not 25. I think it was $35,000, if I'm not mistaken.
The CDBG allocation, you know what, you're not completely mistaken here, because originally it was 35. We had, or let's say 30 and change. We then received an allocation from HUD that was not as high as what we had anticipated, which is why we had to reduce that allocation to $25,000. But I think it was more of a $5,000 to $6,000 reduction. And again, the university helped to fill that gap with matching funds. But even then, even at 32, 33, it would have been insufficient. It's a big task. I think it's worth examining in a future, perhaps bidding round, to your point, Councilor Hughes.
Maybe we ought to think about keeping it in-house and have the DPW do their job, and that's their job. All right, I'll accept that.
If there is no objections, I will take this under unanimous consent for approval. Are there any objections? Seeing none, 157 and 158 pass. 159-21, in order that the City of Fitchburg hereby approves the expenditure of funds from the Massachusetts Department of Transportation Shared Streets and Spaces Program Grant in the approximate amount of $197,950 for the purpose of said grant, which is to convert Cushing Street into a pedestrian plaza. Mr. Skorsky.
Good evening, councilors. So this was the third round of Safe Streets and Spaces funding from MassDOT. This is funding intended to help support commerce and activity in our public spaces, particularly our streets and our parking lots, and particularly those that are municipally owned. So this round of funding, they were targeting projects that led to safer streets. And because MassDOT is already funding the Main Boulder project, and one of the requirements of the Main Boulder project is that we close off Cushing Street for pedestrian and vehicle safety, we thought this would be a slam dunk application to MassDOT to, not just curb off Cushing Street, which was what we were originally going to do. We were just going to put curbs, and that was going to be that. We thought we could take this to the next level and really create a space that helps complement the work we've done on Mill Street. And ultimately, I think that instinct was proven correct in that, the grant was maxed out at $200,000, and we came just shy of the maximum award level, because I think MassDOT understands the commitment that we've made to our downtown and that they've made to this project. So this is really an effort to help supplement the work we're already doing, with a focus on creating a landscaped, pedestrian-oriented space on Cushing Street that will communicate aesthetically and programmatically with Mill Street.
Councilor Zarella.
Thank you. I just would like to congratulate your department on this nearly maxed out grant. You guys do a great job pursuing funds for the city, and I think this is an excellent idea. I know the closure of Cushing Street to traffic had been part of the plan, the preliminary plans given to the council regarding the Main Street and Boulder conversion. And if it's going to be closed off, it's certainly better that it be a beautified, useful space rather than just dead space, which at best is useless and at worst could attract a negative element. I think it's excellent that we will be able to expand the Mill Street project to sort of a pedestrian area rather than just one corridor, and hopefully that will attract some more excellent civic events and really become a hub of civic and cultural activity downtown.
I'd second that and just say how, when you really take a step back and look at what's in that area where Mill Street is, Cushing, you've got Riverfront Park there, then you've got Strong Style Coffee, you've got Eddie's Music, you got the Activate Mill Street stage area, you've got Tacos Tequilas, you've got, I don't know if the business in the corner is still, Trist is still, it's still active. Mm-hmm. So you got Trist, you got Fitchburg Jade, you got El Bolio, you got Beyond, Greek Kitchen. You got a lot of businesses right in that area that I think would be very pleased with this. And there's a lot of activity going on in that spot. So closing that to traffic, I think would make it a lot safer for the patrons that are utilizing that area. And, I really can see once that project is done, that being a hotspot of activity on a weekend night, where you've got music and you've got 2 or 3 pretty good restaurants right there, with the parking garage right next to it. I mean, it just all fits. So you'd have to hope that there's going to be an explosion of interest beyond what's already there and activity amongst the population, because there's just a lot of pieces that are there that are now going to be put together by connecting those 2 lots by getting rid of that road. So it looks like a really promising aspect to this whole transformation. So I'm certainly in support of this as well. Councilor Boschman?
One quick question. I'm in support of it. Just get a quick one. Are you telling me that Mass DOT came in and said you got to close Cushing Street? Or was that under the guidelines of the, when they did the survey, they did the study to make the 2-way Main Street and 2-way Boulder Drive?
So it was actually a local decision. One of the first ones we had made, just planning, whether through our Department of Public Works, Community Development and Planning. Our Chief Martino's not here anymore, but we had our Economic Development Task Force that meets monthly. It's kind of a department head meeting, and we reviewed the original project designs, and we looked at Cushing Street and looked at the traffic studies that Ty and Bond had put together, and just said it doesn't seem, we could do it, certainly, but it wouldn't be the safest outcome. And there really isn't as much of a need for Cushing as there is today once we go to two-way, because there'll be a lot of other opportunities to kind of get in and around Main and Boulder Drive.
All right, I just want to make sure, because I was surprised when you said Mass DOT is the one that said it, and they need that grant.
So,
And I was surprised, because they're the same ones that said when they did the Main Street Bridge over here, where they're going to tear apart, you can only make one-way street going down and up Day Street and don't take a left turn. And all of a sudden, now we can take a left turn with the other lane taking a left turn, because the traffic was backed up for quite a few years.
when I was speaking of MassDOT, it was just that in addition to MassWorks funding, the MassDOT Complete Streets funding is helping to fund the Main Boulder project.
Okay, all right, all right. You'll get my support on it, don't get me wrong.
Thank you.
Motion to approve?
Council,
I'm happy to withdraw.
okay, thank you. Council Walsh.
Thank you. I just wanted to again, commend you for all of this and to say that, that closing off Cushing Street also does something else where you're supposed to be able to turn only left or right, but people shoot across and go up Blossom Street, and so it takes out that potential for disaster. So I think that this is a great idea, and again, I commend the department for all of your hard work getting all of these grants and making downtown look better.
Thank you.
I renew my motion.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve 15921. Any discussion on the motion? There are no objections. I'll take this under unanimous consent. Seeing none, it passes unanimously. And 16021, that the City of Fitchburg hereby approves the expenditure of funds from the Mass Department of Housing and Community Development 40R zoning incentive payment in the approximate amount of $75,000 for the purpose of said grant, which is to target technological enhancements in the city's downtown parking system and implement accompanying signage changes. Mr. Sikorsky.
Good evening, councilors. So one slight correction to the language on the agenda. It says for the purpose of said grant, and it's a minor change, but I guess an important one, in that this funding, the zoning incentive payment, we got for submitting a 900-plus page application to have a smart growth zone created in our downtown. This was a payment to the city with no strings attached. It wasn't a grant in the traditional sense. They didn't say we had to spend it on this. We ultimately made that decision. And I think generally speaking, with the funding that we'll be getting through Smart Growth, our Smart Growth District, both this initial payment, but then $3,000 per unit within the district for any permitted projects, we are really looking to target towards smart growth focused initiatives, whether it's improving local parks connected to transit-oriented housing, or, looking at ways in which we better and more efficiently manage our parking supply. Because if we are going to implement smart growth and reduce parking requirements, we better get parking right in terms of enforcement and management. And certainly, Ann Cervantes has been here patiently this evening as moral support, but also, as the parking clerk, a key element of really helping to move these parking changes forward. Because although I'm in front of you here today talking about this grant, ultimately it's going to be Ann's office and her fantastic team implementing this on the ground. So the grant is really one component of how this will be funded. The other was sent to the Economic Development Committee this evening, and the reason is that second grant has a policy component associated with it. It's not a grant in the traditional sense. It essentially calls for a vote by the council to, even in a resolution, non-binding sense, vote to remove the parking meters and move to time-limited parking on Main Street, and to set a parking availability goal, which basically states that of the given parking supply downtown, what percentage of it would we like to achieve one day. Our average today, we use about 30% of what we have. So the reason that was sent to Economic Development Committee is the proposal and the phasing plan and the PowerPoint that was given to the Finance Committee as a part of this project. This was already presented to Economic Development, and presented to the Public Safety Committee as well in 2020, and kind of set the stage for what we're going to be able to do with these funds. So, long story short, this funding will allow us to implement the short and medium-term changes outlined in that report. So we'll be able to install fixed license plate recognition cameras at both the Putnam Street and the Mill Street garage. These are cameras that when somebody drives in and drives out, it records their license plate, how long they've parked there, if they had a permit, if they're in violation of the time restriction, etc. It also allows for a mobile license plate recognition system to be docked on the parking enforcement team's vehicle, where they can then travel throughout Main Street, and it can, catch plates up at upwards of 110 miles an hour through 3 lanes of traffic. They can basically look at the plates and deem how long somebody's been parked there. You think of the old-fashioned way of chalking tires. This is the upgraded technological way. So we didn't want to just remove meters and not have a solution for how we were going to manage time-limited parking and encourage turnover. This system will make us more efficient and bring us into the 21st century in terms of parking enforcement. And then lastly, it includes the Permit Manager online system, where basically folks will be able to, through an online portal, it's the same portal actually used by MART, will be able to register for daily, half-day, and monthly permits online. And once they're registered, they're then in the license plate recognition technology system. So the fixed cameras will know if somebody pulling in has a permit for a day, half-day, monthly permit, and so forth. So the policy changes that will be needed to accompany this will happen at a later date in terms of the formal changing to an ordinance, but it would be to remove the meters on Main Street and to allow time-limited parking. On Putnam Street, in the garage on the first floor, would be to move from 4-hour parking paid to 2-hour free parking. And then on the Mill Street garage, it would allow for us to open up the Boulder Drive entrance to 2-hour free parking, which is the same as we have at the Main Street entrance. And that last piece is really critical for the main Boulder project, because we're going to be getting rid of the parking on Boulder Drive, and we want to make sure we have plenty of parking for those businesses on Boulder Drive, which they'll now be able to access through that garage. So that's the gist of it. Again, what the Finance Committee will be approving tonight is one of those 2 grants, which is the zoning incentive payment to be allocated towards this. It'll be supplemented with the grant that the Economic Development Committee will be looking at following this meeting this evening.
So the $75,000 is going to be utilized towards the implementation of the mobile and fixed license plate recognition systems?
Correct. Those 2 systems together will be roughly, the capital cost is roughly $83,000, and then it will also include the first year in operational costs, which is about $7,000. And that is one thing I do want to note for the Finance Committee. If and when the formal vote is taken to remove the meters and institute time-limited free parking, we will need to determine how we're going to pay for it. It's not revenue neutral at this time. So just a couple things. With the coins, according to our 2018 parking study, the coin revenue in 2018 produced about $37,000 in revenue. Important to note, it's not just Main Street, that's the entire coin revenue system. But a big chunk of that ostensibly would be on Main Street, although we're at about 20% capacity there. The Putnam Street garage, which again, the first floor is 4-hour paid parking, gets about $5,000 a year. And then in addition to that, there's the $7,000 operating expenses for this program. So in total, in the most conservative estimate, this could be $49,000 a year in expenses that will be associated with this. We could take one of 2 approaches. The first is that this could just be subsidized for a period of time until we monetize the value of our parking system. And again, if we get from 30% to 85%, which is sort of the industry standard for parking, you could think of a time 3-5 years from now when we've got a lot more investment taking place where maybe we no longer need to subsidize it. That's one approach to take. The second approach could be to find that revenue through other means within the parking system. So for example, our parking fines are currently set at $15. You could make an argument that if we're going to institute time-limited free parking, we want to make sure there is turnover, and one good way to do that would be to disincentivize people overstaying their welcome by increasing the parking fine. And then the other thing that we could do is raise the fees with the on-street, or with the off-street parking, the monthly parking permits, which are, as our parking study showed, much lower than averages throughout the region, and certainly in Boston.
So, I don't want to get into the weeds, but I mean, if we do support this, I mean, we're almost basically blessing that implementation. Has there been any concerns raised about privacy issues with this, where people's plates are being screened? I'm just, when I read about it, it gives me pause a little bit about that. I'm sure other localities do it. I just don't know if, I guess I'm trying to understand first off, how does this work? So if I go into the Putnam Street garage, is there gonna be a machine there that I've gotta get a ticket or something? It just scans my license plate, logs the time, and then let's say I have 2 hours to park there. If I leave after 3 hours, it'll scan my plate upon exit, it'll see that I was over by an hour, and then what happens? I get a ticket mailed to me, or how does it work?
So that's something we would need to work through.
Okay, but is that the gist of it, though?
Ostensibly, that would be the parking team would then issue a parking ticket.
Okay, so those are the parking garages. Now, what about on the street? That's where the mobile comes in?
Correct.
So mobile meaning our parking enforcement officers are going to be tagging vehicles that they, how does that work? I'm sorry?
So on top of the vehicle, there would be a camera system. It's actually it's not the same camera that the police department uses, but they do use license plate recognition technology. I think it's Leonardo is the company they work with. But it's a camera on top of the car, and as you drive through...
The parking enforcement officer's car.
Exactly.
Okay,
I'm just saying there's a
yep.
precedent for local use there.
Yep.
And they'll drive by, and then if as they drive by, the camera notices that, okay, 2 hours ago when they were here, this same car was parked in this same location, an alert will go off, which will then alert the parking enforcement team to the fact that they could then issue a ticket as they've overstayed the time limit here. And that's actually the other argument for why this isn't necessarily completely, I guess, saying it's not revenue neutral is true, but you also might be able to recoup and more efficiently issue tickets because of this system is just more efficient by design. But I completely appreciate your privacy concerns. I see the lawyer in the room with his hand up. So.
I'll get to him in a second. I know that we have in this state and a lot of states, we have, the transponders that for Easy Pass that, you put on your windshield and it just like I guess it's just like the license plate reader. It clocks you when you go through the toll, deducts whatever money you've got on your account, and then if you don't have the sufficient funds, it'll send you a fine or a notice in the mail. Just like if you were to go past the toll booth without a transponder, they'll take a picture and there's your notice. So I guess it falls within that line of rationale.
Correct, and it's actually what the same company that MART utilizes in their facilities as well, Ventec.
So MART already does this?
Correct.
Okay, so I'm assuming then that this has passed legal muster, if there was legal challenges. I will defer to the attorney in the room.
One of two.
One of two. Well, I'll go to him right after. I'm almost done. This is the beginning of a broader scope of information that we're going to get more of down the road.
Right.
As to the logistics and as to the costs. But I feel as if we support this money right now, and we're hard-pressed not to because they're giving us the money, we're kind of locking ourselves in then. I don't really see there's going to be options down the road, as you mentioned. We just don't know what those options are, so, but we have to start somewhere. So we have to put our foot into the water cautiously here when we accept this money, not knowing what the full details will be in terms of implementation and financial logistics down the road. So
I will state we are aware of what the capital and the operating costs will be in year one. I think what we have to work out is some of the logistics of just how it'll operate within the city and within the parking clerk's office. So if these funds are accepted and then the Economic Development Committee accepts those as well, we'll then initiate the process with Ventec, get moving, so to speak, develop the scope, develop the timeline, and then at a later date bring this back to the council for the ordinance change. And I would recommend, as part of that change, the Finance Committee look at the financial implications of this and how we can make sure this is either revenue neutral or at least that we're aware we're subsidizing it for a period of time.
Do we know right now if this plan is going to require hiring more parking enforcement officers? I know we have 2 right now. Do we have any idea if this is going to require more staff, or I would assume it wouldn't, since, yeah, okay.
I think it'll allow them to operate more efficiently.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Okay. Councilor Zarella.
Thank you. So I'm going to address a couple points in order of my likelihood of forgetting them. So first, I just want to point out that this is just an approval of expenditure of funds, not a mandate to expend the funds. So if it later turns out that we can't make it work budget-wise, or that we don't pass the ordinance change when it comes before us, nothing would then prevent the mayor from submitting a new order to apply these funds to something else instead. The second, Mr. Chair, I would like to make a motion to amend, but may I reclaim the floor afterwards?
Yes.
I would move to amend the order by deleting the words "for the purpose of said grant, which is," in accordance with the information provided to us by Mr. Skrowski.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to amend 16021 to strike "for the purpose of said grant, which is." Any questions on the motion? Yes, Mr. Brooks?
Give me a second.
Yep. So we will be striking "for the purpose of said grant, which is."
Yes.
Removing it.
Oh, because it's not a grant.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Just strike it to target technology.
Yes, just to target technology. Yeah. Okay, so, all set? Yep. Okay, so, motion has been made and seconded to amend 16021. All those in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
Opposed? 16021 has been amended. Councilor Zarella, you have the floor.
Thank you. So on the legal privacy issue, generally speaking, there is no right to privacy in publicly visible spaces. In other words, the parking enforcement officers would not be seeing anything that they couldn't see by strolling down the sidewalk. They'll just be seeing it more efficiently, more effectively. There has been some concern raised by concurrences and dissents that there could be a Fourth Amendment issue if a person were surveilled in a public place for a lengthy period of time on a consistent basis, but that's not what's happening here. We wouldn't be, following people's cars to see where they go all day or anything. We would just know, are they in a parking spot downtown or are they not? Which is exactly the same thing that our parking enforcement officers currently already observe. So I don't believe there is any legal issue here, although I would certainly welcome any correction from my fellow attorney.
Are you done, Council? Are you all set?
All set, thank you.
Before Counselor Walsh speaks, maybe while I respect the legal opinion of the president and upcoming opinion of the vice president, maybe it would put my mind at ease if we had Attorney Pusateri's office review this, just to give some of us some comfort in this, because while I understand that it's already what we do, this is computerized, this is technology now, so I guess to learn the system better, are the records kept? Is the data mined? Do we have a history of these infractions and a history of every plate that is scanned? Is that logged somewhere in the city's database that says, we know this person was parked here certain hours of this day and then next week the same? Is all that maintained, or is that not kept in the record? Those are the kinds of things I'd like to find out, just for my own sanity. Counselor Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think the one thing I'd like to point out is that what this is doing is taking the plate number from the vehicle. It doesn't have anything to do with who's driving the vehicle. So basically, it's not saying who was there at what point, it's just saying where the vehicle was at that point in time. All right, so I think it removes a little bit of that privacy concern, simply because, automobiles are regulated. You have to insure them. You have to have a driver's license. You have to register them. So all of that, this kind of goes into all of that sort of, it's a highly regulated industry, and where you park is obviously, I guess not, I don't think it's a privacy issue, but again, I would have no objection to having the city solicitor take a look at that and just confirm.
I think that's reasonable, and I'm not a lawyer, but I played one on FATV once, and interestingly enough, one thing that has been found to be unconstitutional as of late is chalking tires. And so that's the traditional way of monitoring time-limited parking, but that's actually seen as a violation of personal property because you're actually marking somebody's personal property. That's all I have to add there.
Councilor Hughes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. These plate readers, with all due respect to my colleague here, those plate readers, everything about the owner, the vehicle, everything comes up on those plate readers. Everything. So if the vehicle has an expired sticker, that comes up on the plate reader. Any kind of thing like that. My issue is when the parking guy, individual who sees this and it comes up, now do they share that information? Call it police. Well, you got a car here with an expired plate. You might want to come down and check it out. You know what I mean?
Right.
Those are issues like that would concern me. Now they're going from parking to now all of a sudden enforcing. Does that make sense to me? You know what I mean? So now this car, it shouldn't be on the road, but that's not the job of the parking person to. If you see that, then report it to the police, and the police come down and tow the car. Does that make sense?
It certainly does, and that actually I can say is within the capabilities of the software, because oftentimes
if it's the same software the police is using, that's all the same software.
Right. So a lot of police departments are the parking enforcement team, so they do have items that can be flagged for those items. I think here it might be a jurisdictional issue as the parking clerk. It's not within their purview. I can't speak to that, but I think that is something that I don't know if the council would be, within their rights to say that cannot be something that could be a component of this program. But I don't believe it's part of the suite of services that we've purchased, and I can certainly confirm that.
Are you done, Council?
Yes, thank you.
I guess just to summarize for me, besides the attorney weighing in on the privacy issue, while I understand there are other localities and MART doing it, maybe for me, I just need to understand better how it works, the mechanics, how the scanning process works, what information gets uploaded into these systems. Is the information kept in those systems as a database and a history, or is it not? I mean, and you're still going to get people, understandably, in my opinion, who are going to be skeptical that even if we say it's not being kept, how can we prove to them that it's not being kept? So I just would like to understand the mechanics of how this program works. So if we could get some information on the program, or even have a presentation on it down the road by whomever the company is that does the installation or does this software or this technology, that would be, I think, beneficial to the community at large who may have concerns with this, to learn about it, just so any concerns may be assuaged. That's just my input.
And I could certainly provide some of those answers in advance of the Thursday final vote of the council, if that's helpful.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine. I mean, when as was said earlier, we're in the early phases. Once we start talking about implementation, the actual implementation, I still think it would be beneficial for some type of presentation to be made about the mechanics of this this software that we're implementing, because it is a radical change from what we've been doing for decades.
Correct. Yeah.
In case there's any questions or concerns about it, so we could dot the I and cross the T on that aspect, that we at least present it to the public. Here's how it works. Here's who also does it. Here's, just something like that in order of transparency.
Understood.
That's all. Councilor Zarella.
Thank you. So I have no objection to hearing a presentation or to hearing the city solicitor's opinion before we vote on an actual ordinance, but I would just like to briefly follow up on the concerns raised by two of my colleagues. In response to Councillor Hughes, the thing is, a parking enforcement officer already can look at the license plate sticker and the windshield sticker, and if they so choose, they could call the police department and say, this car has an expired sticker. So could anyone who isn't a parking enforcement officer, for that matter. So I don't think it really changes anything. We can certainly say, they shouldn't be doing this or they should be doing this, but it's something they can already do in the normal course of their business. This wouldn't give them any additional capability to tell whether the registration is expired or whether the inspection sticker is expired or anything. It would just make it a little easier for them to do so. And in response to the idea that this is, that technology changes things, it does. But there actually is a relatively clear precedent on that issue. There's a case called Kylo, which basically held that the constitutional issue arises when law enforcement uses technology that is not available to the general public to gain information that could not be gained by the general public or by law enforcement without this technology. So in this case, where all the information they would be gleaning is information they already have easy access to, I would still say the technology does not alter the legal issue at any rate. But again, I'd be perfectly happy to hear from the solicitor. I just wanted to weigh in on that briefly, both for the benefit of my colleagues and for the benefit of any watching public who may have concerns on that front. That's all. So I will support this petition tonight, and if and when the ordinance comes before us, we can certainly dig deeper and iron out any nettlesome details.
Any other
Motion to
questions?
approve?
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve 16021 as amended. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I will take this under unanimous consent if there are no objections. Seeing none, it passes 5-0.
Thank you, Councilor.
Last item on the agenda, 16221, order that the City of Fitchburg approves the expenditure of funds from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Community Compact Best Practices Program in the approximate amount of $40,000 for the purpose of said grant, which is for review and analysis of the city staffing levels in all departments, excluding public safety and school departments. Mr. Auditor, are you here to speak on this, or no?
No, I could.
I don't have any letters in the packet on this, other than, or unless I didn't print it out. Do you have was there a letter? I didn't print it out.
Well, yeah, there's a letter from the mayor.
Okay.
It doesn't appear to have any additional information.
No, it says exactly what the, order is. So it's $40,000.
Right, my understanding is that the city has received this Community Compact Best Practices Program grant and is looking to do a review of city staffing levels.
Yeah, it's a grant. It's,
Make a motion, we hold?
motion has been made to hold.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to hold. Speaking on that motion, this grant would have had to have been applied for, right, Mr. Brooks? Do you know?
Yes.
Do you know who applied for that? Was it the mayor's office?
I believe it was the mayor's office.
Okay. Tom, do you have any, do you?
The mayor's office applied for this through the Community Compact Program, which helped fund our economic development.
Can you come to the desk?
Can you come to, sorry. Oh, sorry, there's already a motion and a second on the table. Will we withdraw?
It's Councilor Brochman's motion, I believe.
Will you withdraw the motion so Tom can speak?
Yeah, I'll let him talk.
Okay, so motion's been withdrawn. Tom, please share what you had to say.
So the Community Compact Best Practices Program is what funded our original Complete Streets Prioritization Plan. It's what funded our Economic Development Strategic Plan. It's what funded a component of the zoning rewrite that we just wrapped up. So it's a program, every 2 years, a city can pick an area of interest and submit a grant focused on how to improve municipal services. So in this case, the mayor's office applied to do sort of a staffing review of staffing levels. But I don't know if it was in there, but I believe 2 departments were excluded. I believe the police and the
Police,
schools.
well, public safety and school departments.
Right. So I don't have really anything else to say on the matter, but that I know.
Public safety being who? The police department and?
Police and fire, and the schools, obviously, because school committee has jurisdiction over school staffing. Okay, there's no motion right now. Councilor Zarella?
Yes, Mr. Skrowski, if you know, and it's fine if you don't, was the exclusion of those departments a grant stipulation or something that the city chose to exclude?
I don't believe that'd be a grant stipulation, so I'm assuming it was a city choice.
Okay.
Make a motion, we hold then?
I'll second.
Motion has been made and seconded to hold. Question, speaking on that, is it the committees, who does the committee want to, what's the stipulation for holding? What do we want to have in order to give us confidence in a vote up or down? Councilor Zarella?
I would simply like to hear the rationale behind the exclusion of the public safety departments.
Councilor Walsh?
And I would just like to know, what are they reviewing? I mean, are they reviewing numbers? Are they reviewing procedures? Are they reviewing composition? Or, who's filling what position? I don't know what they're reviewing.
So clearly, it would probably require a request to the mayor to be at the next finance committee meeting to explain the rationale and the methodology behind this grant acceptance. I'm sure we're all likely going to support it down the road, but just to get a little more information on it. My thought on the school department being excluded, as I said earlier, is because this body has no jurisdiction over the school department. That's a school committee function. Public safety, again, I haven't talked to the mayor about this, but I would assume public safety is being excluded because, as we learned in the previous budget session, Chief Martineau, Chief Marama, they would like more people, and that's been the case for quite a while, as long as I've been on the council. So this may be, I feel like these other departments, administrative staff and whatever, they're outside of that public safety scope where more of a review of what they're accomplishing, what they need to accomplish, whether they have the appropriate staffing, like in Calvin's office, the assessor's office, purchasing. Public safety, to me, is pretty clear-cut and dry, and we've gotten many pieces of testimony on what their staffing needs are. So, I'm just assuming, I don't know the full details, so I'm okay with holding it to get an answer, and this doesn't, I'm assuming that this isn't we have to accept this now, because sometimes we get grants and we have to accept it by a certain date. Okay, so we have time. Yeah, Counselor.
I'd just like to confirm that, yes, I do entirely support the underlying effort here. I also completely agree with the exclusion of the school department. I just would like to actually hear the rationale regarding public safety to see if it is, the same rationale put forward by the chair, and also to confirm whether, due to the wording of the order, whether public safety does indeed include only police and fire, or whether, as my colleague, Councillor Boschman, is correct in frequently reminding us, whether public safety also includes DPW in this instance, because that would be slightly harder to understand. But I anticipate there's a perfectly good explanation. I'd just like to hear it. That's all.
Councilor Walsh.
Yeah, and again, Mr. Chair, I would like to say I'm not in any way, like saying that I'm not going to support this. I just wanted a little more information before.
Yep, Councilor Boschman.
And the only thing, reason why I want to, same reasons why you do, but I want to make sure that if I'm going to spend $40,000 and they come back and they say we need 15 people here and 10 people here and 5 people here, that we're going to do something. We're not just going to say, yeah, and put it on the shelf.
Well,
I don't want to spend $40,000 to hear that, and then all of a sudden, yeah, and everything's on the shelf, and we spend $40,000.
Well, the good news is that we're not spending anything. It's being paid for by a grant.
But that's my money.
And it may, right, it's still taxpayer money, but it may sit on a shelf. I don't know. I think it is pretty good practice to have a periodic review of staffing levels in all of our departments and understand where there are deficiencies and where there are opportunities. And I know back in 2008, 2009, my first term on the council, when we were under the DOR's threats of receivership, that was one of the conditions of removing their boot off of our neck, is having a staffing review, which we actually had to pay for. But I don't recall having one since then. So I may be wrong, but I think it's been about 10 years since we've had one. So it wouldn't hurt to update it periodically. And I think the sentiment of this committee is we're not against it by any means. We just would like to understand a little more the parameters and why certain things were excluded. And it's probably a very simple explanation. So I'll support holding it since it's not time sensitive. So I have a motion made and seconded to hold 162-21 with the caveat to send a letter to the mayor's office requesting his presence at the next finance committee meeting. It'll be the first item on the agenda. Motion made and seconded. If there is no objection, I will take this under unanimous consent for holding. Seeing none, it is held.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to adjourn. No objection, we are adjourned. Thank you.